There's optimism in Victoria this morning with coronavirus restrictions easing in the regions tonight and more reasonably low case numbers just revealed for the past 24 hours. But after yesterday's figure of no deaths, sadly, that is not the same today. Reporter Steph Ferrier joins us now from Melbourne. Steph, g'day. So take us through this latest information just through in the last half hour or so.
Yes, good morning, Joe. So we do have another 42 new cases of coronavirus detected in the past 24 hours. That's the same number that we had yesterday. So while those figures might look like they're being stubborn, of course, Wednesday is normally a spike day, or what health authorities call a spike day, after those labs that might have been closed over the weekend start to ramp up and process the tests in batches. So that might be the case that we've still got that 42 number. However, what's important to note is for the first time, Metropolitan Melbourne's 14-day rolling average has dropped below that 50 mark, which is the key threshold that we need to hit before we can come out of these tough stage 4 lockdowns on the 28th of September. They're now down to 49.6, so that is great news. Of course, we do need to see just how many tests these 42 new cases comes off the back of, because yesterday we only saw 9,000 tests being conducted. Now, sadly, as you mentioned, there were 8 more deaths that have been reported. That takes our toll up to 737, and that follows yesterday when we didn't have any cases at all. So it is pretty sad news there for Victorians that obviously will be mourning the loss of loved ones. In the regions, our 14-day rolling average has gone down to 3.5, so that's still lower as well, which is good news. They do have one case of unknown transmissions there, but that relates to a couple of days prior, and obviously that number will fall off in the next day or two, because that was notified from the 1st of September. So at least regional Victoria is still all on track in terms of their low numbers. Our unknown transmissions are still around 82.
And Steph, what's the mood in the regions ahead of the easing of restrictions tonight?
They're obviously very happy, and we're just ever so slightly jealous here in Melbourne. But obviously, as of midnight tonight, they are going to be taking that third step out of coronavirus restrictions. So that includes many businesses being able to reopen. They no longer have these 4 reasons that they can go out of their homes. That's now done away with. They'll be able to have gatherings of up to 10 people outside. They'll have a whole household, or these so-called household bubbles, where one household of up to 5 will be able to actually visit another household's home. Importantly, for pubs, clubs and restaurants, they'll be able to open both indoors and outdoor dining with some density restrictions, but that means up to 50 people outside, so that's really good news for them. And also for school children, well, they'll be able to go back to school next term, and that's all grades, not just the juniors and the seniors as well. So it's really good news for them. The Premier today is expected to announce a ring of steel, this so-called ring of steel of police operatives around Metropolitan Melbourne, and also potentially heftier fines as well for anybody from Melbourne who is trying to illegally go out there and potentially pose the risk of spreading coronavirus outside. There's also going to be announcements expected today on elective surgery, with the wait list now going out to about 60,000, and it's expected regional Victoria will be able to start their elective surgeries first before Metro Melbourne.
And Steph, there's this inquiry that's been set up that's looking into what went wrong with the hotel quarantine setup, how the virus was able to get out of that system. Who is speaking at that inquiry today?
It's going to be a very interesting day today, because we have Professor Brett Sutton, the state's Chief Health Officer, giving evidence. So there'll no doubt be further information about the Department of Health's involvement, as well as the 2 state controllers from the Department of Health who were charged with fighting this coronavirus pandemic. Tomorrow we're expected to hear from the Police Chief Commissioner Shane Patton and his predecessor Graham Ashton, and then next Wednesday it will be Premier Daniel Andrews' turn.
And what can you tell us about this legal action that's been filed against the Victorian government?
Well, there are two cases that we have on foot at the moment. The first one is a class action, and we spoke with the lawyer who's fronting that, Tony Carbone, on behalf of Victorians who lost their jobs in this pandemic. Now, he says that it's clear that the government has caused this by botching the hotel quarantine program and using security guards with insufficient oversight, and that is what has allowed this virus to escape from returned travellers out into the wider community.
These workers have lost their jobs because of the hotel bungling. The government, if it wasn't for their debacle involving the hotels, we wouldn't have had the stage 3 and then subsequent stage 4 lockdowns, which effectively meant that people would have continued to work. Once that JobKeeper allowance goes, we believe that a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. What we're saying is that but for the state government's inept handling of the hotel quarantine, we wouldn't have had the second round of lockdowns and people wouldn't have lost their jobs. What I want to make clear is this: we're not blaming the government for any job losses prior to the second round of lockdowns. We're saying that this claim picks up anyone that has lost their job because of a second round of lockdowns.
He's expecting that potentially thousands of workers will join this class action, and they want compensation not just for their loss of earnings but also for psychiatric harm caused by this. The lead plaintiff is a 21-year-old warehouse worker, and he lost his job just 2 weeks after the second lot of restrictions were imposed as a result of this deadly second wave, and he now can't put food on the table and pay his new car loan as well. Now, the other case is relating to a cafe owner from the Mornington Peninsula. She is trying to overturn the state government's curfew, and she says that she fears losing her home as a result of her business struggling. This woman says that she had earnings in the 20,000s, and they've now whittled down to some hundreds of dollars a week. And she says that she wants the Supreme Court to declare this curfew unlawful and invalid, saying that it's a violation of her human rights and also is completely disproportionate given that the Mornington Peninsula has just 3 active cases. That's fewer than Geelong, which is coming out of restrictions. It's important to note, though, that this woman is a Liberal Party member and she is seeking a pre-selection in the state seat of Nepean.
OK, Steph, we'll leave it there, but just so happy to hear that that 14-day rolling average for the first time in a very long time has fallen below 50. Steph Ferry reporting there from Melbourne. There are still tens of thousands of Australians stranded overseas, desperate to come home, but the weekly cap on international arrivals is stopping many of them from coming back. A solution on how to handle the situation is yet to be reached, and pressure is increasing on both federal and state governments to do more. Political reporter Stephanie Boris joins us now from Parliament House in Canberra. Steph, g'day. So just explain for us, first of all, what is the current situation?
Good morning, Joe. Well, there's more than 20,000 Australians that are overseas and have registered with the Department of Foreign Affairs their intent and their desire to come home. But at the moment, there's a cap, a weekly cap of 4,000 Australians that are allowed to fly back here and go into that 2 week of hotel quarantine. Now, the reason for the cap came about when we saw the Melbourne outbreak, because the Victorian government said it could no longer manage the hotel quarantine program as well as trying to contain the outbreak. So that meant that more Australians flying back from overseas had to go to different states and territories, and it got to a point where the state said they didn't have the capacity to cover all of those flights that would have gone to Melbourne, because we're talking about a number of healthcare workers that are needed to run this hotel quarantine program, and also police officers too. So hence why that limit of 4,000 a week was introduced. Now, that is in place until the end of October, unless another solution can be reached before then. This is an issue that's talked about at National Cabinet every fortnight. Their next meeting is this Friday, where no doubt the premiers will be talking about whether they have the ability to maybe take a few more Aussies every week.
And what suggestion has Labor come up with as to another solution?
So the federal opposition leader Anthony Albanese believes that the VIP jets that are used for the Prime Minister, the Governor-General and dignitaries should be used to fly overseas, pick up Aussies and bring them home. However, that doesn't really solve the problem because there are commercial airlines that are more than willing to bring Australians back here. The issue is that cap of 4,000 people per week. So the federal opposition leader Anthony Albanese was pushed on that this morning as to whether he believes Australia has the ability and the capacity to bring more people back. He says yes, because the federal government should be doing more to help the states lift that figure.
Common sense has to take place here. The Northern Territory yesterday, for example, pointed out that they have a facility that can fit up to 3,000 people just outside of Darwin. It was used earlier on. Christmas Island was used earlier on. There are a whole range of Commonwealth facilities in addition to hotel space that Queensland, West Australia and the Northern Territory have all said they're prepared to do more with some support from the Commonwealth.
And so, Steph, can the states and territories handle more arrivals?
Well, before we go through the states, Joe, just to point out, Christmas Island was obviously used earlier this year to house a number of Australians coming back from overseas, but the federal government says that can't be used now because there are criminals being housed there instead, so that facility is no longer available. When it comes to the states, we know here in the ACT, they're not taking any international arrivals at the moment. They say they don't have the capacity to do so. In the Northern Territory, they're not taking any international arrivals either, but we do know the Northern Territory government is talking to the Commonwealth about whether they would be able to take flights. That will take a little bit of logistical work in terms of, for example, flights from LA fly into Sydney, so there'd need to be talks around flights like that going to Darwin instead of direct to Sydney. In South Australia in recent weeks, they said no way, they don't want the cap to be lifted any further just yet, but this morning we've heard from the Premier who said he is interested in lifting the cap for their state, and we'll talk about that at National Cabinet this Friday. New South Wales already takes a great deal of people and they have been asking for weeks for other states and territories to do more. So there looks like there is some room for movement and some room for growth there. But as we know, Joe, these things do take a while. So hopefully there may be some good news for some Aussies stuck overseas, but don't expect it within a day or two.
Okay, Stephanie Boris reporting there from Canberra. Gold Coast theme park Dreamworld is reopening its gates this morning after a 6-month coronavirus closure. Reporter Michael Rennie joins us now from Coomera on the Gold Coast. Michael, g'day. So how is the park planning to reopen today?
Morning, Joe. Well, the numbers will be capped here for the reopening, but just how many people are actually coming through the gates, the Dreamworld Park is keeping that a secret, but it has been 177 days since the park was last opened. There's been a skeleton crew operating here throughout the shutdown, and that's been maintaining the rides and also looking after the various animals that are here at the park. It will be a COVID-safe Dreamworld when they open up this morning, Joe, at around about 10 o'clock, and that means there'll be hand sanitizer stations throughout the park. They're going to encourage social distancing while inside and also cashless entry. It also means that there won't be any sort of lineups for any of the rides as well. They're going to make sure that they're all separated and spaced throughout. Most of the rides will be open, although I'm told Buzzsaw, one of the main rides, will be shut because they're still waiting on a part from Europe to fix that. There's also a whole lot of, it looks like the makings of a roller coaster sitting in the car park as well, and that's one of the new attractions they're going to be bringing here soon. And look, there was a few people lining up now, and I spoke to actually the first person in line this morning.
She used to come on a weekly basis. She used to love it, so every day since they've been closed, she's been asking when are they open. So we've been waiting now for this day for 6 months. So.
Well, you've been waiting for this day for a long time, haven't you?
Yes.
I love that pink bow. And so, Michael, how's the state government been helping them through this forced closure?
Yeah, well, the state government has lent Ardent Leisure, who run Dreamworld, $70 million to keep afloat during the coronavirus periods. They've also lent an undisclosed amount to Village Roadshow because this is one of the biggest employers on the Gold Coast, and it plays such a crucial role here for tourism as well. And that's what they say they've lent this money to them for, is to actually keep jobs here on the Gold Coast. and also to support the tourism industry, the $28 billion Queensland tourism industry, which has just been decimated because of the coronavirus.
But Michael, is there still some kind of court action continuing over that terrible accident a few years ago?
Yeah, there is, Joe, and Ardent Leisure is due back in court on September the 28th. It's a work, health and safety court proceedings, and last month the company pleaded guilty to 3 charges relating to the deaths of the 4 people on the Thunder River Rapids ride in 2016. Now the charges relate to an alleged failure for the company to comply with health and safety duty. They're facing fines of around $4.5 million for that, for the 3 charges. But there's also talk of a memorial garden being built here to honour the 4 people that were killed in that tragedy in 2016. That hasn't happened yet, but the company is planning to do that sometime in the near future. And school holidays, Joe, they start in Queensland next week. I think that's when we'll get a real gauge of just how many people are willing to come back through the doors here at Dreamworld.
Okay, Michael Rennie reporting there from the Gold Coast.